Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus. It's Monday, and we have some news for you guys.
Aw, don't start them off like that.
Unfortunately, you guys are still going to have to deal with us because we like doing this.
Yeah, we love it too much.
April Fools.
April Fools.
And joining me as always is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and hopefully that woke up our listeners just a little bit. But let me go ahead and ease us into an actual joke that they might like. How do you plant a kiss in spring?
How do you plant a kiss in spring? I guess kiss the soil? Lips? I don't know.
Dirt lover. It's actually with two lips.
Oh.
So I honestly read this joke and I didn't get it for a hot minute because I was like, well, with two lips. Uh-huh. And then I said it out loud several times. I was like, oh no.
It did what happened to me.
It did.
Okay. We're catching back up after the week of sickness. This is actually the video right after the voice got better.
Yes.
The one you guys saw last week was the video we recorded right before she got sick for that week.
I must say, there's nothing like a stomach bug that debilitates you into not wanting to do anything. But I am so glad I am much better, and I appreciate everybody's heartfelt responses. Reading it when I got better was like the creme de la creme of getting better.
It's actually very humbling, and thank you guys for all the support.
100%.
For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for thought.
So, Voyse.
So, Timstradamus.
It's time for another announcement.
It is. We have 2 new Teatreons. Welcome to the Tea Club, Kettle Bear, and Kitty Zombie.
Meow. That's what I think a kitty zombie sounds like.
Now I'd like to see artwork of kitty zombies. Very cute ones, preferably. Welcome to the Tea Club.
Yes, love and appreciate you. Welcome in.
Now, Timstradamus, I know you've been the one making my teas and soups while I've been sick, but I wanted you to go ahead and enjoy some get well tea. So I made you some ginger and honey and lemon tea.
Oh, well, at some point, it'll definitely be my turn to make you tea on the channel.
I'm excited about that. I think it would be fun if you had some of the tea that you make and I tried along with you, just so that we can see each other's reactions to it.
Yep, that tastes like getting better tea.
It definitely works. Ginger is very good for your gut. Lemon definitely breaks down a lot of mucus when you're congested. But lemon itself actually really does help with nausea too. So for any people that are looking for a tea to get better with, nothing is quite as good as having something as simple as lemon and ginger when you're getting better.
Well, I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your get well tea, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for misleading my daughter about the gender of her sibling to get her to stop annoying me? My 4-year-old daughter, we'll call her Sophie, had been asking about getting a sister for a long time. My wife and I kept telling her that a sibling may come along someday, but we were quick to tell her that we couldn't control whether it would be a boy or a girl. This led to Sophie closing her eyes and wishing for a baby sister most nights, which my wife and I found cute, but also somewhat annoying. She insisted on doing this routine, which wouldn't change anything and was delaying her bedtime by several minutes. But we decided that it wasn't worth arguing about, so we let it go. Well, last week, my wife texted me a picture of a positive pregnancy test that she had taken at work. I was pleasantly surprised and excited to once again become a father. Naively, I made the mistake of telling Sophie the news. She demanded to know the gender of her future sibling, which of course we don't know yet. No matter how many times we've gone over this with her, it just doesn't sink in, and it gets extremely aggravating to go over the same information over and over again with her. Yesterday afternoon, I decided I'd had enough. I turned to Sophie and said that she would be having a brother and that she could stop asking for a sister every night because it wasn't going to happen. Sophie immediately said, "What?" and teared up, like she was shocked about what I had said. Statistically, there's a 50-50 chance it's going to be a boy, so the idea that it was outside the realm of possibility for her was absurd. Pretty soon, though, her disbelief turned to sorrow, and she had a giant meltdown right in the middle of the kitchen. My wife was out buying groceries, but Sophie hadn't finished her tantrum when my wife walked through the door with all the bags. She saw me standing there and asked what happened. I whispered in her ear what I had done, and she said, "You what?" in a very loud voice. She immediately asked to speak with me in another room and hadn't even finished putting the groceries away. When we got into her office and shut the door, my wife erupted like a volcano. She said that I had no right to mislead Sophie and that she's being annoying about the pregnancy because she's 4. I tried to explain that this will make Sophie go to bed earlier and that she won't even remember this in a few years anyway. I have no solid memories before age 5, but my wife wouldn't listen to any of my points. She demanded that I apologize to Sophie and say that I told her incorrect information. I think my wife is overreacting, and perhaps the pregnancy hormones have something to do with it. Sure, I told a little white lie, but it's going to make our daughter significantly less of a headache for the both of us. My wife would barely speak to me as she left for work this morning, and it really stung to be disrespected by her. Am I the a-hole?
I believe that our OP is a gigantic a-hole. Your wife was right. It's a 4-year-old. They're going to ask questions over and over again. The fact that you haven't caught on to that and it makes you annoyed 4 years into the game is interesting. I would wonder what you're going through.
I would wonder why he would want another child if he can't have enough patience for his first one.
To the point where you're making things up to hurt her feelings. Because this is the thing. He hides it under this guise of, well, it'll make her go to sleep early. You said that she was sitting there praying. I guess she had her eyes closed, doing some type of ritual. I don't know if he said it was praying or not, but wishing. Are you really that upset about a couple of minutes? You know, you guys could have turned that into something fun. Instead, you looked at it as her being a pest. I don't get it. Even to this day, I still do a take-off, check-off list with Voyse in the bed.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
You can do little rituals and stuff like that to make things fun, to start your day or end them. But for you not to see that that's a 4-year-old, being a 4-year-old is rough. You have no patience. And if it's not done your way, you will chastise them. And I can see that throughout your writing. And I guess I'll put the cherry on top of this shit cake that is his story. You discounted everything your wife had to say about what you had done, chalking it up to its pregnancy hormones. You need to work on that. So you are definitely the a-hole OP.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. The same as what you're saying, Timstradamus. Redditors were going, "You're annoyed by a 4-year-old acting like a 4-year-old? That doesn't make any sense." Additionally, there was a lot of feelings regarding how our OP did exactly as you described, wrote off his wife and her concerns. Yeah, there are instances where pregnancy hormones may make you act a little bit over the top, but that doesn't mean that the issue never existed and that some feelings aren't valid. By trying to invalidate it and use it as a reason to invalidate someone else's opinion makes OP a very gross person. Additionally, there were a lot of Redditors that pointed out, wait, OP, you went out of your way to tell Sophie when you knew that she was, in your words, being annoying to begin with. So you exasperated the problem without even telling your wife. And then your way of fixing it is to hurt your daughter's feelings. What are you doing, dum-dum? Something in me rang wrong when it came to OP before it even got to the pregnancy hormones comment. When OP said she immediately asked to speak with me in another room and hadn't even finished putting the groceries away. I really dislike how people talk to other people as if the lack of them doing something is an audacity to them. I find that in that moment when I read that, yeah, there are some individuals who really don't have patience. You can't make patience come out of nowhere. You learn patience.
Yes.
And for a first-time parent, that could be a little difficult to truly, I guess, like sink in. And I didn't really fault them for that. But To hear how our OP was speaking to his wife and then to essentially stamp their character later on with the hormones comment, yeah, OP is very much a jackwad.
I can agree with that.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this interesting scenario. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to accept her daughter as white? Both me, 33 female, and my sister, 27 female, are Caucasian Latinas. However, she's always been more tan than me, a fact she's always been very proud of. For reference, my skin tone is close to Aubrey Plaza's, while hers is closer to Gina Rodriguez's. When we were younger, she would constantly talk about how European I looked compared to her, how my hair looked more blonde than brown, which no one ever agreed with, and how certain colors I liked look awful on me due to my skin tone. I almost never said anything because I was 6 years older and had better things to do. Also, while I did have many insecurities, I never doubted I was beautiful. Fast forward to now, we both have kids. My husband is a little more tan than me, and both our children, 8 male and 3 female, have the same skin tone as their father. My sister's ex and baby daddy, however, is a very pale Swiss guy. My niece, 5 female, is a fair-skinned girl with dark blonde hair, and my daughter is more tan and has dark brown hair. Everyone agrees that both girls are beautiful, but their skin tones have always bugged my sister. She insists that both girls are equally tan, that her daughter's hair is light brown, and that my daughter spends too much time in the sun. Last weekend, we all had dinner at my father's place. My son brought his notebook and drew pictures of everyone on the table. He colored my daughter's skin a darker shade than my niece. Edit, orange for my daughter, light pink for my niece. He also gave my niece yellow hair and colored my daughter's hair black. He lost his brown pencil. When he showed us the drawings, my sister frowned. She said he was exaggerating his cousin's features and that he could at least make her hair darker. When my niece said she loved the drawing, my sister told her it looked nothing like her and insisted my son is doing this on purpose. Before the kids could get upset, I pulled my sister aside and told her she was being ridiculous. We had a very small fight in the next room. Near its end, I said something along the lines of, "Listen to me. Your daughter is white. We're all white. You need to accept that and stop comparing the girls if you don't want niece's name to become insecure." We left shortly afterwards, and none of the kids have brought anything up again. My sister is pissed at me. She told both our divorced parents about our fight. Our father thinks I shouldn't have commented on my niece's appearance and wants me to apologize to my sister. Our mom thinks this is dumb, I agree, and says my sister is overreacting. Am I the a-hole?
This argument that they're having is basically off the whiteness of the children.
Correct. It seems as if OP's younger sister wants her daughter to be a darker white, more tanned complexion.
What a ridiculous way to look at kids or skin color. She's upset about the picture that the 8-year-old
Correct.
had drawn. So it's through his eyes, his perception of what it looks like. That's all you should have chalked it up to as an adult. Why would you ever at that point look at a picture a child has drawn and have a comment to say that's negative?
Especially that he's doing it on purpose in a mean way.
How ridiculous is the aunt? Good on the OP for at least having the presence of mind in that moment to take her aside and go to another room to have this conversation. Given the scenario, because we are talking about kids and her being in the proximity of them and being I guess at this point, an influence on them, I don't see her response to her sister being anything that was out of line. You're giving her the straight truth. And if your sister doesn't get help, because we're talking about people in their 20s, 30s maybe.
OP is 33 and her sister's 27.
Okay. You need to seriously go get some help, because you looking at life as a meter of skin color is odd. And you keep doing that, it's going to be a reflection onto your daughter. And then she's going to start taking all of these bad things that you clearly have, and she's going to push those forward in her life. And as a parent, the one thing you strive not to do is give your kids your baggage. At least that's what you should be trying anyway.
I agree with that.
So no, OP, you're not the a-hole in my opinion.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. Redditors were saying OP's sister definitely needs help, that the mom's behavior can lead to self-esteem issues for her child. OP responded and said, I wouldn't say her comments when we were kids impacted my self-esteem. I remember feeling very insecure about how Latina I looked for a long time, but not because my kid sister liked comparing herself to me. But again, she's my sister. I can't imagine having my mom do that to me. Other Redditors came out in response to this comment and were saying, yeah, OP's a bit older. Her little sister saying some comments may not have affected her or her self-esteem issues at that time, but a reaction to a sibling versus another sibling saying something is very different from a mother to a child saying something.
Sure.
And the impact, while is still there on both fronts, is much stronger when it comes to a parent-child relationship. Our OP did also confirm that they're not American, that they were born in Latin America, and that they're currently raised and are living there. So I find it a very interesting situation. If anything, personally, I can understand both sides here, mostly because of the insecurity that I felt being of a lighter skin tone in a multicultural family. It can feel as if you're the outsider. And if OP's sister doesn't wake up and realize what she's doing is very wrong, she could make her own daughter feel like this outsider that I had to experience myself many times. Well, I do wish our OP the best. I hope she keeps standing up for what she thinks is right, of course in a civil way, which I honestly feel she did very well. She pulled her sister to the side, talked to her about this issue, and yeah, it might have been a fight. In my mind, a fight is just a disagreement with a lot of feelings in it, but it doesn't mean that it got out of control. And I think that's the important part. Everybody can disagree. You just need to maintain respect.
Yep.
Now let's go on to our next story and see what you think about a trip. Am I the a-hole for asking my brother to bring me along? My female 18, brother, male 27, and his wife, 27, are going to New York City, which is about 6 hours away from where we live. Their plan is to drive there and spend a few nights, then drive back. On a related note, one of my oldest friends in the world moved to New York City 5 to 6 years ago. I've been planning on going and visiting her anyway, but my dad doesn't want me to drive since it's pretty far. So I asked my brother if I can come with them, and he could just drop me off at my friend's house on their way. He looked at me funny and went, I'm not doing that. And I asked why, and he said he wasn't going to bring me along on a vacation with his wife. I said I wouldn't be coming on the actual vacation. He could just drop me off. And he said that they're going to be in the city for multiple nights, and he doesn't feel right leaving me alone in the city for that long. He asked what my plans was for sleeping, and I said I'd just stay with my friend, or worst case scenario, sleep on the couch in their hotel room, but he literally laughed in my face after that. He said he definitely wasn't letting me into their hotel room on their vacation, and that he didn't want to babysit me during the trip. That was pretty mean of him, since I'm literally not even going to be with them most of the time. And I said that it wouldn't be babysitting, since all he'd have to do is drop me off and pick me up. He said, and drive you there and drive you back and let you sleep in our hotel room. But my thoughts are that driving, sleeping in the hotel, those are all things that he's doing anyway, and it wouldn't cost him anything extra to let me come along. The actual vacation, they'd still be alone. It would basically be like we were just driving near each other. I said all this to him, but he just kept saying no and that he wouldn't do it. And I guess I might be the a-hole because I told him he was being stingy and prioritizing his wife, who he only married like a month ago, over his actual family, who's known him as long as he's been alive. I know he hates being called out like that, but I was really angry. After that, the conversation basically ended and he started ignoring me. I talked to my parents, and they said they talked to him, but they can't make him do anything, even though he's literally their son, especially since I tried to force myself into the trip. Am I the a-hole here, or is he just being mean?
Sounds like our 18-year-old needs to learn what boundaries are, because there was something very telling at the very end of her story. She was talking to the parents to try to force him into taking her along. If you think that that's what your parents can do to your sibling who is 27, then your parents failed to teach you what boundaries are as well. So that's a no-no right there. You're definitely an a-hole. Up until the very last part, I was okay with just saying no one's the a-hole. Because honestly, as an 18-year-old, you're allowed to ask your brother if he would be okay with dropping you off on his way to their vacation. You're allowed to ask those questions. But he's also allowed to say no. And at that point, that should have been the end of it. You going beyond that, you're going to learn as you get older, is what makes you an a-hole. Not accepting the answer for what it is. And I know there's a lot of people who can't handle no. And especially when you're younger. So learning how to handle rejection or something not positive is very important, especially when you're younger. It will help go a long way. It definitely would have led to you not saying the rash comments you did with your brother. Do you think saying those type of things will garner you what you want from the scenario? It's his wife. You said it yourself. They've been married for less than a month or so. Could this be their honeymoon that you're pushing yourself into?
That's what a lot of Redditors were questioning.
So for you to not have taken that, because again, we're talking about an 18-year-old. What 18-year-old out there is able to take the full scope of a situation and understand it for what it is and not put themselves selfishly in the middle of it? I'm not saying all young kids are like this, but what I am saying is I'm not surprised. That's why I was leaning towards no a-holes, because you have to learn in your time. But that comment at the end shows me that your parents have shown you that there's no such thing as boundaries, and you will get what you want as long as you push hard enough. I believe you are the a-hole. I hope you've learned, though, and people have given you perspective, because this is definitely a learning experience. Please don't push your way into things when someone has told you no.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is hands down the a-hole. In fact, many Redditors were shocked at how entitled the whole post felt. The fact that OP would essentially try and sick their parents on their very grown child because OP is having a tantrum. Yeah, just wow. If anything, I think the OP's additional comments kind of stamped in how entitled their personality really is. For one of their comments, they said, "Who cares if it's their first or second or their millionth vacation? I'm literally just asking for a ride." In another comment, they said, "But it would be such a waste of money for me to get my own ride, own hotel room, etc. if they're literally going on their own." OP sounds selfish. And based on how they were responding to Redditors, I don't think that it's going to change anytime soon.
Everyone has to come to that in their own time, if they can, because some people just are selfish from start to finish. So, but I can only hope for people who are, or anyone, regardless of your age, I can hope that you can grow as a person.
I hope OP's brother stands his ground. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about laundry. Am I the a-hole for being disgusted my clothes were washed with used hygiene products? Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This isn't that deep. No one is a monster here, so please be chill. I went to visit my sister and used a budget airline. It's muddy where they live, and my niece likes to be outside, so I went through clothes faster than I planned. I caught my brother-in-law about to start the laundry and asked if I could throw some things in, and he said yes. When they were folding clothes and separating them out after the wash and dry, I noticed weird fabric things being set to the side. You guessed it. Those reusable pads. I expressed how I was weirded out my clothes were washed with those and was essentially shut down. My sister said they were thoroughly rinsed before they even get to the laundry room, etc. We argued a bit because I really think brother-in-law should have given me the heads up with a biohazard load and left it up to me to choose. Eventually, they said they don't act like that time of the month is taboo in front of the kid and asked me to drop it. So I did, but it really soured my last day. I ended up having to bring the situation up to my friends because when I got home, I was supposed to go straight to a meetup, but had to be over an hour late to go home and change since all my clothes were Aunt Flo tinged. General consensus is I overreacted, and I'm an a-hole for arguing about it, but I don't think I agree, so I'm bringing it here. Relevant info, I do make a lot more than my sister, so my clothes are an investment and not just things I can throw out. But now I don't think I'll ever be able to enjoy wearing them. Also, my sister does have a valid reason for using the reusable, and I'm not arguing her right to use them, just that I should have been given a major heads up. Am I the a-hole for being grossed out?
Okay, so the question is, am I the a-hole for being grossed out? No, you're not the a-hole for being grossed out. You are an a-hole for everything that transpired in the story, but as far as being grossed out, you're allowed to be grossed out about anything. But we will get into the reasons why you are an a-hole, because this is the start and the finish of it for me. You asked if you could put your clothes into a load that was getting put in. You did not do that load. You were not in charge of anything going in or out or being responsible for doing the laundry. You just wanted to Sherpa your responsibility onto someone else. And that's what you got. I mean, with my understanding, no matter what goes into the wash, as long as you're using the proper cleaning detergents, doesn't it get rid of the germs anyway?
Yes. I mean, I imagine there'll always be some form of germs or bacteria on anything and everything, but I think overall it's clean.
I don't see what the problem is, but I can also understand people are very picky about that. You're allowed to have your preferences, but you're not allowed to have them if you're not the one doing them. You can't expect that at not your house, the way people do things is the way you do things. So that's what makes you the a-hole, OP. And the one part I don't like in this story, the fact that you don't allow your friends to be your check. You said it yourself. They all told you that you were in the wrong. And if you're above reproach and they can't hold you accountable, you need to start asking yourself why that is.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole for this situation. If anything, Redditors came out saying, look, clothes have a bunch of gross stuff on it. Like underwear literally has shit particles on it and other scientific fluids. It's just the way the body is. Personally, I have to say, I dislike how OP tried to, in the very last paragraph, it felt as if he was belittling his sister. I do make a lot more than my sister, so my clothes are an investment and not just things I can throw out. But now I don't think I'll ever be able to enjoy wearing them. What person doesn't think that someone purchasing clothes isn't an investment for other people too? Especially for people who make considerably less and is much more difficult for them to buy new clothes. So the fact that OP would do that screams at how they probably took this whole situation and why it is that his friends are telling him that he's overreacting. Now, I also agree with you, Timstradamus. There are very specific people that like things a certain way. If you're that specific, then you need to go ahead and hold yourself accountable for the things that you would like done your way. And if you're skeeved out on how laundry is done, I also agree with Redditors. There's a lot of gross things on clothes, especially undergarments. The fact that OP's sister says that they already pre-wash it, the reusable pads, before it even gets into the wash, shows that they're very mindful of what they're doing. It just sounds like OP's being particularly picky, and it's sort of showing them in a different light when they try and make other people look bad, especially when you're talking about income-wise.
I just want to make this clear. You're allowed to be particular with the way you have your clothes washed, what you're eating, whatever it is in your life. You're allowed to be particular.
I agree.
You're just not allowed to do that when other people are doing those tasks for you in their home.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this one. Am I the a-hole for wanting my 34 female daughter, 15 female, to come live with me again? I had my daughter, Stephanie, young, 19 to be exact, and thus had to stop my whole life and raise her alone since her dad up and ran away till she was 6, and later on met my now husband, Mike, 35 male. We fell in love quickly and got married when Stephanie was 8. Mike had 2 other kids, Olivia, 9 female, and Jackson, 6 male. We tried hard blending our family, and it worked for the most, except Stephanie. She didn't like that now she had to share her room with Olivia and didn't like sharing me with them. She would throw tantrums and would correct them if they ever called me mom. Mike didn't like her attitude, and when Steph was 10, told me to either pick him or her. Back then, Stephanie was at fault, so I picked Mike and sent her to my parents. We had a huge fight once my mom realized that I was sending her there for a while, and my dad called me a bunch of names for abandoning my daughter, which I wasn't. I was letting her have her space and save the peace of the family. I did keep tabs on her online, and like I knew, my parents set her straight, and she started doing good in school and had lots of friends and is really involved in their community. I tried calling her often, but she would dismiss me fast, saying my mom wanted her to help her make dinner or my dad wanted to take her camping, so she was out. Now on to the problem. Mike and me finally got us a house that has enough rooms for everyone, including Stephanie. I went to get her back home, but she told me she liked living with her grandparents as they were nicer and more fun than me, and she liked how big her room is. My dad made it specifically for her. She loved being with her animals. My parents own a big farm, and she has lots of animal friends, cows, horses, and such. And she didn't want to leave her friends and community she built in their small town. I told her I wanted her back home, but she said no. My parents told me I couldn't force her, and when we argued and I yelled at them that they couldn't keep my daughter from me, they kicked me out, saying Stephanie picked her home, and I needed to accept it whether I liked it or not. I tried calling and texting Stephanie, but she's now blocked me. I don't know. Am I the a-hole for wanting my daughter back home?
You're not an a-hole for wanting your daughter to live with you again. I think every parent wants their kids to live with them, or they should. So no, you're not the a-hole for that question. I think I'm doing it again based off of last story. But you are the a-hole for how you've gone about it. You didn't want to fight for your daughter 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Correct.
And now you want to fight for her. It's too late. You said the reason why you sent her away was because your current husband didn't like your daughter. And you were forced into a toxic ultimatum.
Either him or her daughter.
That should have been the stopping point. Now, I am not in her situation. I don't understand the economics of all of what they're going through and what she had to deal with, what the in-home situation was like between the daughter and the husband. But the truth of it is, if that statement leaves your partner's mouth, you need to go seek outside counseling. That's where it needs to start with. You don't then go, okay, let me get rid of the problem. Because the problem in this story was a 10-year-old daughter. That was the problem. Seriously? Unacceptable that you couldn't both have worked through it like adults and figured out how to make it better instead of treating her as an object you could just pass on. Now, see, this is where it gets better for your daughter, though. She goes from that stressful environment, because I'm certain it was, you send her off to your parents and it works out for her. She's been setting the roots and in the community for 5 years. In my opinion, it's really hard for kids when they have to be moved around a lot with friends and school. It's really hard when they're a part of that. So why would you want to participate in it? Especially when you know, and this is the fun part of this story, ROP is under this misunderstanding that because there's an extra room now, because there's room in now a new home that they had bought for the daughter, that the problems that her daughter and the current husband had are all of a sudden fixed. You believing that because there's extra room for your daughter now makes their issue go away is a problem. I hope you got given much needed perspective here. If your daughter's in a good place and she's with people that love her, because the thing is, you didn't love her enough to fight for her back then. If anyone makes you choose between you or your kids, they're the problem. Understand that. I'm sorry again, maybe she felt like she needed to do it because we don't understand finances. And I understand some people do, unfortunately, through their partners, get put between rocks and hard places. But understand, you still made those choices. You said, oh, I tried to stay in touch with her through looking online. I didn't hear about phone calls or visits or planning things.
She said that she tried to do a few calls, but
When along the way did you do it? Did you do it a year or two in when she's already in her head being pushed out of and away from her family and her mother? I don't know along the way how often you tried. I'm sorry those things are happening and you're feeling pushed away by your daughter, but understand you did that to her 5 years ago. These are the consequences. So please, for you and your daughter's sake, please don't force anything. If she doesn't want it, respect that. Teach her what healthy boundaries are because you don't have them in your life. So OP, you are the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP is the a-hole. In fact, Redditors came out saying, OP, you did abandon your daughter. Those aren't just baseless accusations by your parents. OP's actions clearly showed that her daughter didn't have as much value to OP as her daughter probably hoped. If anything, OP's daughter is very lucky to have grandparents that love her so unconditionally, and OP has no right to want to play mom now. I think for me, when I've read this, I have to say, it doesn't matter how old you are when you have a child. There is such a thing as being too young to have children in my mind, because you're still trying to experience things as you're growing. But when you decide to have a child, truly decide, and that is your choice, then it's time to step up. And I think using me being young as an excuse to make morally wrong choices is just that. It's an excuse. And our OP tried to use it as her reasoning as to why it is that she did some of the things that she did. But no, that's definitely not the way that OP should ever look at this situation. They made a wrong choice. It impacted the relationship with her daughter. She can't expect her daughter to want to come running to mom with open arms without there being repercussions to the choices that she made. And if anything, I think she's doing way more damage right now by trying to force something that's not there, and it will only make her daughter resent her mother. If anything, reinforcing with her daughter that she is there, that she does have a home and a roof, and that if her daughter wants to reach out and possibly mend what was potentially broken, that would be a much better step than saying you have to come live with me because I want that.
Oh yeah, 100%. You got to work on that relationship if you want that. You're right. You can't just invite it back in and go, well, now that I'm ready to pick up the pieces, now that I think that I'm ready to handle 3 children and a 15-year-old daughter, now you can come back. You can't do that. Kids don't operate like that.
Agreed. Now, let's go on to a story about plastic surgery. Am I the a-hole for being truthful and admitting that I find my wife unattractive after her surgery? My wife had plastic surgery recently. We had discussed it and I was against it. It was not my decision and ultimately I had no say. She looks weird now. She had the fat sucked out of her face, lip fillers, a neck lift, other stuff I don't really get. She gives me uncanny valley vibes now. It freaks me out. She is fully healed now and she wants us to go back to normal, like me initiating sex. I have done so, but not as much as I used to. And when I do, I try and make sure there is very little light. It's been a few months, and I kind of dread having to look at her. Obviously, she has noticed. She has been bugging me to tell her what's up. I've tried telling her I'm just tired from work, or that I'm run down. Really, anything except for the truth. She broke down and asked me if I was having an affair. I said that I wasn't. She asked to look at my phone. I unlocked it for her and handed it over. I wasn't worried about her finding anything because there is nothing to find. She spent an hour looking through it and found nothing. She asked me to explain why I changed. I tried explaining that I just wasn't that interested right now. Nothing I said was good enough for her. She kept digging. I finally told the truth. I wasn't harsh or brutally honest. I just told her that her new face wasn't something I found attractive and that I was turned off. She asked if that's why I turn off all the lights now. I said yes. She started crying and said that she needed time alone. She went to stay with her sister. I have been called every name in the book since this happened. Her sister said I'm a piece of shit for insulting my wife's looks. Her friends all think I'm the a-hole. I tried not to say anything. I can't force myself to find her attractive. I still love her, but her face is just weird now. She looks like the blue alien from The Fifth Element. And if you'd like Timstradamus, I actually put that picture on your phone if you want to take a look.
Okay. That's messed up.
Am I the a-hole?
I'm only laughing about the picture, the blue alien picture. That looks pretty funny. But nothing about this story is funny. I just want to make that very clear.
Just so that you're aware, the procedure that OP confirmed was done is the buccal fat remover.
I guess it's facial fat sucking, I guess.
Correct.
It sounds weird the way I said it. Facial fat sucking. Anyway. So he's asking if he's the a-hole for being truthful with his wife.
Correct.
About how she's got this surgery and now he no longer finds her attractive because of a series of questions and the way he's been treating things recently after the healing happened. Obviously, your partner's going to pick up on those things, especially if it wasn't a part of your relationship before. Now, as far as being honest with her, I don't believe you're the a-hole for that portion of this. You are correct on one thing. No matter what you say to your wife, it's her body to do with what she wants. You're allowed to tell her that she doesn't need it or that you think she doesn't need it, but it does come down to an individual choice. There are consequences for the actions we take in life, and this one is one of them, because unfortunately, I don't think those are things you can undo.
This specific procedure, when you take off the fat in your face like that, you can't undo it. It's not like removing breast implants if you don't want it. It's gone. And I'll get into more of that in a little bit, but let's go ahead and hear your thoughts.
I don't believe you're the a-hole, not in the truth. I do believe you're the a-hole based off of when it happened. Instead of pulling away from her and beating around the bush the way you had, you should have definitely just gone ahead and let her know from the onset, because what you did was you made her feel like a pariah. Just because we're trying not to hurt them doesn't mean we're not hurting them. And that's really the only thing I don't like about it, is you should have, as her partner, I'm not sure how long they've been married and what their history is, but you should have at least had the honesty. This could have been hashed out however long this took to get to this moment where she's...
It sounds like it was just a few months.
Okay, at least it wasn't longer than that, but you should have had the conversation. The second you realize what you felt and how you felt it, you're allowed to tell people the truth. And yes, there is a way of going about it without being, I think what he had said was brutally honest. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to be crude. It doesn't sound like he was. To have gotten to the point where they believe they needed that is probably where I would start. Through Voyse and I's relationship, I have definitely made it very clear that no matter what you want to do with your body, it is up to you. But just understand, I love you the way you are. I don't need you to make altercations or be something that's not real. And again, you're allowed to be those things and want those things in life. I'm not shaming anyone for those things. I love that we've been growing older together and things have changed. I would start there. I understand though, even if you have the most supportive person in your corner, if you still want those changes for you, you're going to get them. Just understand though, that comes with consequences. In my mind, I guess you are and you are not the a-hole.
I can understand that. The consensus on Reddit is ROP's not the a-hole. And let me go ahead and read one comment that I think kind of spotlights for me what all the other Redditors were saying. The comment is, "Oh man, there are plastic surgeons out there that refuse to do this. 1, because of the damage it can cause, and 2, because there isn't enough data to show exactly what it'll do over time, but they suspect it'll cause some worse problems down the road as people age, even worse for people under 40 to 50. According to the rabbit hole I went down recently, buccal fat is good to have because it can reduce jowl sagging later on. Anyway, while it's totally in her right to make the choice to get that surgery, you're not the a-hole OP. No one's an a-hole for what they do/don't find attractive. And I said this in another comment, but you tried to compromise internally and tried to protect her feelings, but she flung around accusations of cheating, wouldn't let it go, kept pushing, and when you were honest with her, she flipped shit, left, and pulled other people into your marriage who are now on a slam campaign against you. She did all of this and still can't manage to take any personal responsibility or act like an adult about it. To be honest, this post would fit for another forum called Oh No Consequences, but not because of you. I must say, after this, I have never really looked into plastic surgery. Honestly, Timstradamus, you've made me feel very comfortable inside my own skin. I feel attractive, and it doesn't matter how other people see me because the only opinion that for me matters in that regard is yours. I think in my mind, that's very simple. When I was younger, the only thing that truly scared me about going to plastic surgery was honestly just the fact that if they mess up on you, that's it. They mess up on you. You'd have to, 1, pay a lot of money to get it fixed, or 2, you're stuck looking in such a way that might make me afraid to feel as if I'm a stranger in my own skin. And that's the only reason for me why I've never even once looked at plastic surgery as being a real thing. for me to be comfortable with. But I did delve more into this, and that commenter was right. There are a lot of doctors that do refuse to do this plastic surgery because they say that the buccal fat in your face is actually very good, and it actually does assist when it comes to getting older, reducing the jowls from sagging on your face. If anything, some of the major, I guess, things that could happen after this type of plastic surgery kind of freaks me out. You have scarring, bleeding, numbness, loss of sensation, damage to the muscles that actually help you smile. You can get infections. You can injure your salivary duct. You can have temporary or permanent facial muscle weakness. Like for me, there are so many things that could go wrong. I can't imagine taking that leap. It doesn't mean other people shouldn't if that's what you would like to do. I'm just saying there really is a lot to it when it comes to the consequences, not just looks wise, but also what could potentially happen when it comes to long-term effects.
I agree with everyone about their assessment. He is not the a-hole. I just wish that he would have had the conversation earlier, or they would have gotten to the reason why she felt that she needed it. You know, why didn't you do the research? Because I'm certain that with the way you looked at it, you probably did a pretty good fair amount of research, and just based off what you heard, that should have told any rational person, don't do this. Like there's not enough research. You're getting into waters that you are the test subject. I am sorry for both parties though. I hope that they come to a resolution that benefits them both.
Well, let me go ahead and tell you that there's an update.
Oh?
So let's go ahead and delve into this update. My wife came home yesterday and we finally had a long talk. She told me that the reason she had the surgery was because her mom and sister talked her into it. They convinced her that she was starting to look old and that I would find someone else to be with if she did not do something. That's why her mom gave her the money for the operations. Her mom and sister look like Bruce Campbell in Escape from LA. They are the very last people on the planet that should be telling anyone to get plastic surgery. I used some of the comments I read on my post as talking points. I told her that I loved her and that she was the person that I wanted to spend my life with. I told her that the surgery would take a while longer to settle down and that as I got more used to her new face, I would learn to appreciate it. She asked me if I wanted her to see if she could get it reversed. I almost screamed at her. The last thing in the world I want is for her to fuck up her face more than it already is. I asked her if she could please just leave it and let me get used to it. We talked about 3 hours and we decided that her mom and sister would not be a part of any decisions in our life going forward. She is going to leave her face alone and give me a chance to get used to it. We are going to look for a marriage counselor and maybe individual counselors for each of us. I am going to make an effort to show her every day how I still find her desirable, and she is going to make an effort to believe me when I tell her I love her the way she is. We are going to talk to her mom and sister and tell them that we are taking a break from them. We are going to block them and get our shit together before we allow them back in our lives. Thank you to everyone who tried to help me. I would like to add that I did not think there were that many guys out there with a weird blue squid lady fetish. It isn't for me, but you do you.
I'm just shocked that when his wife came to him and said that this is what she was looking to do, that he didn't ask and see where this was coming from. Because see, had he done that, had he heard that this was an influence by her mother and her sister, they could have met that at the door before it even got kicked off, right? There's some huge dropping of the ball of communication in there. Because that's where I would have started first. Why are you feeling this way? Because at that point, we can tackle it. And if at the end you still feel that way, then it still is in your court to do. But at least then we would have had the conversation. That's important.
I wish I could be more in their relationship to understand how their dynamics are. If anything, I can understand OP being afraid that if he pushed too hard into, I guess, convincing her that she shouldn't do the plastic surgery, that she might resent him because this was a choice that she wanted.
No, I can get that, but I'm not saying he needed to convince her. What I'm saying is they both needed to see why it is she felt that way. It's not a do it or don't. It's a, so why do you feel like you need it?
But I think coming back to it, for a lot of people who are talking about things that others want, that there might be that almost like hesitation with really delving into it in the fear of they're trying to convince them one direction or the other.
Well, then that's a fault on the communication within the relationship. Because if you can't ask each other honestly, well, why do you feel that way? Then you need to get to a point where you can, because that's important. You could have avoided all of this problem, because all she'd had to have said was, well, my mom and my sister are putting in my head that you're not going to find me attractive as I grow older with you. And then he would have laughed, because it sounds like he has a good head on his shoulders, and went, no, I found you. You make me happy. I get excited. I have never looked at you once, Voyse, as we've started getting older, and said, I need to find something better. That's ridiculous. Who doesn't want to watch the person they love get older with them? Age doesn't look like that to me. It blows my mind, but I also understand everyone comes from different values and a different set of morals and all of those things. I understand that. Not everyone's cut from the same cloth.
Well, let me go ahead and read one Redditor that actually posted in the comment section regarding the update. They said, first red flag is getting the surgery. Second is saying you don't have a say in the matter. Third is listening to her family's idiotic rambling about you leaving her. Fourth red flag, for me, is how this post reads. Are you okay? Blink twice if she is harming you. Our OP answered and said, single blink only. I love her.
Like I said before, he's choosing to take it one day at a time.
And that's all that our OP can do. If anything, I can understand how difficult it is, but if our OP really does love the person that he fell in love with, looks might take a little bit. That's about it.
I just wish that they had had the type of communication they sorely needed. Don't let other people influence permanent decisions in your life.
Well, let's go on to our next story, and this one's slightly darker, so there is a trigger warning for self-harm. Am I the a-hole for going no contact with my mom after finding out why my dad took his own life? Throwaway account, because I don't want this tied to my main. I'm 21 male and lost my dad to suicide 11 years ago. It was terrible, to say the least. I loved my dad and looked up to him. We were really close because I was his only child, and him and my mom didn't have any other children back then. After his death, my mom remarried a man named John, and they had 2 kids together, my half-sisters. John was all right. He always treated me well. Back to the topic, I never knew the reason why my dad took his life. I always thought it was because of me. So my mom put me into therapy when I was like 11. Therapy did help eventually, but I always wanted to know what pushed him. About 2 years ago, I went to visit my paternal grandparents. They always stayed in my life, and they were always good to me. My dad was their only child, so I can't imagine what it must have been like to lose their son. Anyway, the topic of my dad came up, and my grandmother started tearing up. I just asked her what's wrong. She said that she can't handle this, and she wanted me to know what she thinks drove my dad to suicide. She said that 2 months before his death, he found out my mom had an affair with her now husband, John. My dad was crushed and went into a deep depression, so he took his own life. My grandfather was there, and he confirmed it. I asked why they didn't tell me sooner, because I should have known. They basically said that I was young and I shouldn't have been burdened by this, and that they didn't want to ruin the image and relationship of the only parent I had. And they were also afraid that my mom might not let them see me again. To say that after hearing this I was a mess is an understatement. I didn't confront my mother immediately. I went back to uni, and it took me weeks to confront her. During these weeks, I was distant, so my mom just thought I was busy. When I went back home during the summer, I confronted her. As soon as I just mentioned that I knew about her affair with John, she immediately broke down crying, saying that it was never supposed to be like this, that my dad was never supposed to find out about the affair, that she has guilt for all that went down. She was just sobbing and crying out loud. Then John heard her cry and wondered what happened. I told him that I knew about the affair, and his face just went pale. I basically told my mom that I never want to see her again and that I will never forget nor forgive her for this and that I will go no contact with her. She begged me and kept apologizing, but I just left the house and went back to my dorm and kept crying. It's been 2 years now, and I refuse to see Mom or her husband. I know that my dad taking his own life is a choice, and no one is responsible for it, and that no other person can control their own mental health. I just can't get past that maybe if my mom didn't do something that selfish, my dad would have still been here. Am I the a-hole?
What a very sad, spicy meat bail. This story leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. So I guess we'll just break this story down to its basic elements, the way I look at it anyway. You're allowed to go non-contact for whatever reason that you choose it to be. If you need the non-contact, it's because you're trying to heal and get distance from the situation. Everything that this young man has told us in the story is pretty heinous on the mother's part. You know, she cheats. The fallout of the cheating happened. Whether or not she was the cause of the husband self-deleting, that's up for debate. You really won't know the full reason as to why someone does that. But there is a lot in this story, given the knowledge that we know about it. I can't blame anyone for not wanting to have contact with that parent. So, in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole. Please go seek outside help, though, because you're young. You sounds like you're in your second year of college.
21.
Very young.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. In fact, there was one Redditor that said, look, just like you said, Timstradamus, people go no contact for a number of reasons, but it's been 2 years since you've done this. Why are you asking Reddit now? Our OP responded and said, I didn't mention this in the post because I didn't want it to be too long, but my aunt texted me about 2 weeks ago saying that my mom and sisters miss me and want to reach out to me. I miss my sisters. They're young and they aren't to blame. I talked to my friends about it and some suggested that I should just forgive her for the sake of my siblings. In other comments from OP, they put down, my mother was the one who had an affair and did the more selfish choice. And for my mom to marry her husband after all that happened is just truly disgusting. I'm not upset with my dad. I will never know what it's like to go through what he did. He was an amazing man, and he was the one who made my childhood great. Another comment was, I just can't get over the fact that they're happy and still together, while my dad took his own life because of their actions. He might have had underlying mental health issues before, but it was the affair that pushed him. Just about every memory of her is tainted. And for the last comment, I would not have gone no contact with her if she hadn't cheated, but the problem is she did cheat. And I don't know what must have been going through my dad's mind when he found out. My relationship with my mom was good, but now every part of it is tainted. I just can't get over the fact that after his death, she still chose to marry her husband. I miss my sisters more than my mom. Her husband can burn. I couldn't care less.
Yes, she's a bad person for the cheating and subsequently all the other things that happened for that. But she is not responsible for what your father did to himself. I'm sorry that he didn't get the help he needed and it resulted in that, but I think that one is maybe where I'll draw the line on what I think someone is responsible for. And it's no differently than people when they get in bad relationships, when a partner goes, I'm going to self-harm if you leave me. That is not your responsibility to hold them up. They need to go get the help, but you need to get away from that type of person. Because we don't know what happened between your mother and your father. Truly, we don't know. Was it that he threatened to do those things and your mother still went along with marrying him? See, that's where we're going to get into these deeper waters where we're assuming a lot of things. But you will never know how exactly that went down.
I also agree. If anything, one of the things that I definitely agree with Redditors is how they touted the grandparents. They made sure to stay in their grandchild's life. And they did make sure to tell them the truth when they were an adult. That, for me, is very telling. Knowing that it's easy to place blame somewhere else when it comes to that kind of stuff. You're looking for it. Now, I will go ahead and I will say that while OP wants to continue being no contact with his mother, he should definitely find a way to contact his sisters. It doesn't mean that he has to talk to his mother, but he shouldn't just cut off his relationship with his siblings if he still loves and misses them.
Yeah, don't make them pay for what you perceive is their mother's fault. Again, whether that be right or wrong, because I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with his rationale. I just know that you shouldn't be holding other people responsible for someone else's decisions in life.
I agree with that. And sometimes it's not as clear cut, and us looking in will never get the full picture. We can only get half of it.
That's what I was trying to say. It's a deep hole that we're looking into, and there's a lot of layers. But just, I understand though, he's a 21-year-old, just got given this information about his life. I can understand trying to have everything correlate and make sense, because that's what we try to do. We try to make sense of everything. But in this way, you're kind of leaping over it and placing blame where I don't feel it's just.
Agreed. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this one. Am I the a-hole for telling my 19 female husband, 20 male, that I don't want our kid? So throwaway account because I don't want any of my friends or family to find this. My husband, 20 male, and I, 19 female, have a 3-year-old son and a 7-month-old daughter. 2 weeks ago, I found out I was pregnant again. My husband was super excited, but I've been in hysterics, and I said I couldn't do it. My husband told me that we have to keep it. I told him I couldn't because my body is in so much pain, my mental health is in shambles, and I want to get a college education, which would be near impossible with 3 young kids. My husband and I had a talk, and he mentioned that I would be a liar if I got an abortion because early in our relationship, I said that I didn't think abortions were good or morally correct. That idea was based on my family's beliefs, and I don't believe that anymore. I think that's reasonable, but my body physically cannot handle this much anymore. I told him that I wanted to get to college and get a job, not have 3 kids before I could even legally drink. He said I was being a horrible mother because I didn't want either of my kids. I love both my kids, but neither were planned. Before you say we need protection, I'm aware we use condoms every time. He then told me that he would tell my family and all my friends that I had gotten an abortion if I followed through with that. My family and friends would hate me if I did, and I'd be even more alone than before. Now he's mad that I mentioned I didn't want our kids. I never told my kids this, only my husband. He's told some of his friends and family members that I told him I didn't want our kids, and now they have all been talking to me about how terrible of a mother I am. I'm a little angry with myself because, well, I feel like a bad mom for not wanting them, but it's the truth and something I confided with my husband. I would never tell my kids that. Even if they were accidents, I still love them both so much. So, am I the a-hole?
So we do need to frame this story correctly. We're talking about a young lady that got pregnant when she was 15, had the kid at 16, had gotten pregnant again, had a second child when I'm guessing she's
7 months ago.
Oh, wow. And then gave birth, and now she's pregnant again.
Less than a year, correct.
She's telling us that she doesn't believe her body can go through it again. There's like zero healing that has happened through this.
The minimum should be 18 to 24 months between children.
We're nowhere near that for her. She's telling you that she's struggling. For the husband not to understand what's happening, because remember, she was 15 when she became an adult. That's what happens. That gets taken from you. You have to step up. We've said this. I hope that she continued with her education. She says she wants to get into college. So I'm hoping she at least got her high school diploma. But the way this reads to me is, if she did get her diploma, if she has been a good parent along the way, it's in spite of her husband, not because of. And the worst part is, you can see where he's now using this to trap her further into this isolation that's already happened. She says if he tells them what she believes, that she's afraid she'll be more alone. I would argue that you sound very alone. If the person that you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with and grow with is making you feel like you're the bird in the cage, it's not a good partner. At that point, I would say you need to do what's best for you I can't imagine it's very easy to, because we don't know what her life is. We don't know financially.
Oh, we do know.
Oh, do we?
OP has actually said he has full control of the finances. OP's husband does not allow her to go on any kind of birth control, and the only type of birth control that they're allowed is just condoms, which, by the way, a lot of Redditors think has been tampered with by her husband based on how quickly the pregnancy happened.
Look at the results. There's 3 kids within 4 years. That'll tell you enough. Does she say how her family dynamics work? Does she have parents that are in the picture?
They're apparently very heavy Christians. From how she's phrased it in the comment section, when she found out that she was pregnant, they got married not shortly thereafter, just so that it aligns with their religious views.
Okay.
So it's not a marriage that's a very healthy start to begin with.
Sure.
Which is why hearing her talk like this, where she says she loves her kids, but she wishes that she never had her kids right now, a lot of this rings to me that she's going through postpartum like crazy.
Sure.
She's had 2 in such very short amount of time. But then on top of that, now she's potentially pregnant with the 3rd. It is so unhealthy to have kids so close together like this. A woman's body needs so much just to recuperate from one pregnancy. And she's going through 3, in 4 years. I can't even imagine the stress that she's being put under to emotionally try and keep it all in check along with physically. I can feel the stress just from how she writes, where you can hear how trapped she is, but not just that, but how emotionally confused she is. And all that I think when I read this, OP's husband is extremely manipulative.
Sure.
To control her in such a way and then use everyone around her and the religious views to control her even more is disgusting. In my mind, all that I keep saying is just get out. Just go.
Well, that's why I asked, how are the family dynamics? Is she able to do that? Because we can say that all we want to through a screen. If the parents are willing to listen and hear her out, the problem here you told me is they're very religious. But the thing is, just because you're very religious doesn't mean you can't listen. So I'm not certain if she's had that conversation with her folks yet, but I hope people have at least offered that as a place to start. Really talk to them first. And if you can't have that heart to heart, then at least you know where they stand. Again, I've heard that many times. I've come from a very religious background, but that doesn't mean my grandmother or my father, when I had problems along the way, weren't willing to at least listen. Even
That's
if it
very
does
true.
Go against the religion, you're allowed to think for yourself. So I hope her parents can give her that support, because I agree with you. She needs to get out of that. That doesn't get healthier.
Well, let me go ahead and read one comment from OP. OP said, "We got married when we were 16 and 17. I didn't want to get married. I threw tantrums about having to get married and keep the baby. It was very clear to everyone I didn't want to follow through with it."
Oh, this makes the story so much worse. So based off that, then no, there's no support from the parents. This is what they wanted. You couldn't have a conversation with them.
Not if they made you get married at such a young age and have a child that you weren't ready for.
How ridiculous. There's no winning. No matter what she does, it's going to be tough, whatever direction she walks in. Either to stay the course and go further into this, I would say, madness, or to, essentially what we're saying she has to do is strike out on her own.
And it will probably be one of the hardest things that she can do.
Legally get things in motion. You want to get in school, you want to start living your life, it starts with getting a divorce, getting things put in stone for those kids, whether or not you keep them or they stay with him. Get it all worked out legally so that way you can move forward in your life the way you want to. And I know it's going to be tough, but people have started from the ground up and you can too.
Well, let's hear your verdict.
Oh, 100%. She's not the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP's not the a-hole. And Redditors were saying your health should take precedence. If you need to, go ahead and make that choice and do not tell him anything, because your life is in your hands. Additionally, other Redditors were coming out and saying, don't trust him. Don't be intimate with him anymore. You clearly need downtime. Your body needs to heal. If you're cracking like this, you clearly need to take care of yourself. And if your husband can't do it, you need to do it.
What you've done is you've trapped your daughter
in a very abusive and controlling relationship. If you have someone who is seeing her crack and is making her feel like she is an awful person because you put her in that broken spot. As I've said, there are a lot of women that deal with postpartum, and it is difficult for any woman who does it with their body fully mature. Can you imagine when your body is still developing and you're dealing with that after back-to-back pregnancies and now you're potentially on a third? I can't even imagine the stress.
I can't imagine being in a relationship where the other person would use other people to manipulate and hold you down. I just feel really bad for her because it sounds like she's under a lot of pressure and there's no release.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this situation. Am I the a-hole for being resentful at my wife over our third child? My wife and I are both in our mid-40s and have 3 kids aged 13, 9, and a little one who's just turned 1. We've been through a lot in our 13 years together. Really tough times, including substance abuse and mental health issues, but we've always somehow pulled through, and lately, things have been looking up. We started to enjoy life more, taking trips, and just having a good time together with our kids after everything seemed to calm down post-pandemic. Our youngest daughter was born a little over a year ago, and she's been an absolute joy. But here's the thing. I'm feeling really upset with my wife over how we ended up deciding to have another child. I was set on sticking with 2 kids after the roller coaster we've been through, but my wife kind of dropped hints now and then about wanting another, even though she knew I wasn't on board. She would occasionally comment about taking out her IUD, saying it was unlikely she'd get pregnant because of her age, but also mentioned maybe I should get a vasectomy. It all felt very wishy-washy and not like us making a clear decision together. When she got pregnant, it hit me hard. This past year with our baby has been wonderful and also really tough. I know how babies are made, and I am responsible for my actions. I love my daughter, but I can't shake off this feeling of being manipulated by my wife. It feels like she just went ahead with what she wanted without us really deciding together. It reminds me of many other times when she's taken on responsibilities and then passed them off when they got too much. She has had many animals that she has acquired over the years only to push them off on her parents when she doesn't want to handle them any longer. She wants what she wants and cares little about the impact of those decisions on the people around her. This whole situation has left me feeling like I can't trust her the same way. I'm looking for some kind of apology or acknowledgement from her about how this situation has made things tough between us. I am totally up to keep growing ourselves together, but I feel like I need some acknowledgement of what happened here before I can move on. Am I being the a-hole?
So this OP is very wishy-washy, and you can see it throughout the entirety of his story. He says how great his wife is and how amazing their life has been recently, trips and all the things they're getting to do with their 13 and 9-year-old. Now they have this kid, and all of a sudden she's manipulated him into the situation. She says it very clearly that she wants to take out, I think it's her IUD.
Correct.
And that he should get a vasectomy. Well, the way his attitude is, what's going to happen is what's going to happen, because I'm guessing he thinks that because they're in their 40s that she can't possibly get pregnant.
Well, yes, because apparently she had said that more than likely with them being in their 40s, she's unlikely to get pregnant. And just to make this clear to everyone, when you get pregnant in your 40s, it's a high-risk pregnancy.
Very much so. But just because there's a lower chance of it happening doesn't mean there's not a chance of it happening. And that's what happened here. As they say, life finds a way. And it did. So you're dealing with those consequences of your inaction. If you really didn't want that kid, you should have gotten the vasectomy. End of story, because you knew what she was going to do. She told you what she was going to do. And apparently, she did it. You should have done it too. These are good learning lessons. I'm sorry that you had to learn it in your 40s and you feel now that you've been manipulated into a child, but you were not. I highly suggest you to go get into some type of counseling soon, because that resentment's only going to grow later. You're definitely the a-hole, OP.
So the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, Redditors came out and said, so you've had 2 kids. You clearly know what happens when you have unprotected sex. What makes you think something would have changed somewhere along the way? And why would you think that it's your partner that's manipulating you into it when you know what could potentially happen? Eyebrow raise. Other Redditors said, your wife literally said that you should get the vasectomy just in case, and you didn't. And yes, like you said, Timstradamus, it sounds like our OP is the one that's being very wishy-washy here. I have to agree. I don't like the way our OP is very back and forth on things. They have a good life, but his wife is this awful person. They have this child that he loves, but at the same time, he hates how he has her. It's very back and forth. It sounds like OP needs counseling into accepting the choices that he makes in life.
It can be tough for older parents to acclimate to their life being changed again if they've already had kids or if this is the first time. I've seen a lot of this now where people who believed that they wanted kids, especially later on in life, you're talking about in your 40s, they're having to restart the toddler, taking care of stuff, can be truly tough and life-changing to the point where they can't handle it. So maybe he's going through this now, having to realize that they're going to have to relive what they've lived for 13 years all over again, but now just doing it at an older age. So I can understand having that type of aha life crisis moment, but understand that those are the choices you made. Now you need to move through them healthily. And you can. Just get outside help first.
Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about some intimacy. Am I the a-hole for reducing intimacy after girlfriend suddenly wants to wait until we're married to have sex? My girlfriend and I have been dating for about 1.5 years. We've been having sex for about 1 year. A few weeks ago, she stated that while this will be difficult for her due to her high sex drive, that she will no longer have sex until we're married. Her reasoning is that she feels horrible for having sex as she's a Christian. I completely understand this. She loves making out, cuddling, dancing, grinding. I am no longer comfortable with doing the above 3 with her. It's difficult enough not to have sex, but doing the above 3 makes it more difficult. I recently told her that I am no longer okay with doing those there, and that I'm fine with holding each other's hands and hugging. I am more than happy to do the above 3 once married. This made her extremely upset, but she eventually accepted it. I feel like an a-hole, as it's essentially, if we can't have sex before marriage, you can't get what you want before marriage. I'm trying to reduce my desires through reducing physical touch that I deem sexual, but the lack of intimacy also makes it feel like we're friends, not boyfriend and girlfriend. P.S. Yes, I know that I can just leave and move on, but we do have a ton in common and enjoy each other's company. I'd hate to throw away a relationship over one issue. Am I the a-hole?
Seems like a pretty big issue, because I have this question that I don't believe he answered. Forgive me if he has, though. Has he proposed?
No.
Was there any talks of a marriage?
No.
So 1.5 years into their relationship, after already having sex, from the beginning, I understand it, she tells him that they are no longer going to be intimate like that anymore. And it's because I want to wait till we're married.
Let me go ahead and read to you one response from our OP. OP says, we're both in our early 30s. I'm doing well financially. I truly believe she did this due to guilt and her beliefs and wanting to get married sooner.
See that? That's where I was headed. Is this girlfriend using sex as a manipulation tool into a marriage? Because if so, those are dangerous waters. Now, I don't know her, and maybe he is correct. She's doing it because of her background and she feels guilty. And this is how to, in her mind, rectify the situation. But there's also that little itch in the back of my head that goes, are we playing with something different? Is this a manipulation tactic where all of a sudden now this thing is taboo and these foundations that we had laid the relationship on now are no longer okay, but they're okay as long as a certain criteria is met. But those weren't boundaries and things, values put in place at the beginning. That was 1.5 years in. He says he likes her and he wants to see where this relationship is going. That's all I heard. No love, no proposals, nothing like that. So out of the blue, when you tell your partner that you're no longer having access to something that they've had access to from the beginning, but they'll only get it if they put a ring on it, does that seem healthy?
Not even a little.
You shouldn't be getting married just so you can have more sex. That'll lead to catastrophic outcomes because there have been plenty of people that have fallen into that trap, both men and women.
And have been unhappy in their marriage.
Very, because that is not what makes a marriage happy. It is a piece to the puzzle. It is not the whole thing. So he's simply asking if he's being petty for anteing up and saying, we're no longer going to be kissing or grinding, or what's the other one? There was 3, I think.
There was making out, cuddling, dancing / grinding.
Okay, but he only had problem with like 3 of them.
The dancing and grinding he puts together.
Okay, so those 4 things he's no longer going to do because now he no longer has access to sex.
Correct. And it's his way of not trying to force it more.
Does that also seem healthy? Not really, because now what you're doing is, it sounds to me, yes, he can make the excuse up as to why he's doing it, but it just looks petty.
She put boundaries down and then he put boundaries to her boundaries.
Yes, I understand putting boundaries down, but I don't like that the boundaries are coming with transactions. You have to adhere to this in order to have this now. I don't think that's healthy. So in my opinion, I think both of you suck. I mean, he says he understands he can leave her. Right? So people have obviously told him, hey, if you don't like these values, it's time to go. That is your choice to stay in this relationship at this point. You know what's happening. You know the foundations and the boundaries she's put down. But then for you to ante up and go, okay, I am going to stay in this relationship with these values, but I'm also going to put my stipulations on this. Do you think that's healthy for anyone? Do you think that when they do eventually get married, let's say for sake of argument, they get married in a year or 2.
I don't think it's healthy, but I can understand it. It would be no different than saying that I want to stay away from eating fast food, but you're bringing fast food around me and I have to deal with the temptation of it.
I'll say this. When you get in a relationship when withholding love is on the table, it doesn't stop when you get what you want.
That's
very
true.
That's what I fear for when you're talking about, especially younger, people, young relationships. When that card is on the table, when you start playing those games, it doesn't stop when someone gets what they want. It becomes the go-to. So be very careful of those things. That's why I say I don't agree with petty. Pettiness only leads to more petty.
I can understand that.
So in my mind, you both suck. I think there should have been a more healthy, grown-up conversation that didn't lead around someone saying, you're not going to get any more because my religion is saying no, but if you marry me, it's fine. And then you going, okay, well, I'm not going to do 4 things for you that I know you really like that are a part of essentially a healthy, growing relationship. Kissing, hugging, cuddling, dancing, like...
You can do hugging, just no cuddling.
If I told you, Voyse, that we are no longer cuddling.
Hey, you're starting to fight here and the listeners don't want this.
Have we ever withheld anything like that from
We
each
have
other?
never withheld physical affection from each other. Not even when we're upset.
Has that ever been on the table in any form?
No. I think you and I, no. There's only been one time where I went to sleep upset with you and I had turned my back. And when I woke up the next day, I told you I hate it and I never want to do it again.
We learn and you grow from those things and you're supposed to. But I just can't get along with saying only one person sucks because I know what people are going to say. Obviously, it would be, she's the a-hole. I get that. But you also need to understand that by you entertaining it, you're an a-hole too. You're an active participant in setting the foundations for your relationship. Do not get into the point where you're withholding. The resentment, it will be so bad for you. So please, don't believe that that's a good tactic. Talk.
Well, the consensus on Reddit was that our OP's not the a-hole, as you already presumed. I have to agree with you. Everyone sucks here. It wasn't until you truly broke it down that I saw it in that way, because for me, I was on board with our OP's not the a-hole. He was responding to boundaries with his own boundaries just to try and make sure that he respected her. And as I gave you that example when it came to the fast food and how you're trying to stay away from temptation, in my mind, I can see myself even doing that to be sure that I would respect whatever it is that I have to respect on when it comes to a partner.
Sure.
Now, the way that you put it is that it can come across as petty and it's setting bad precedences in a relationship. I can clearly see that. And I've also heard and seen how some people will use the tactic of withholding intimacy to try and get someone to commit in a marriage that they're not prepared for.
Or any type of intimacy, not just sex. I'm talking about kisses, love, affection. It's important that you don't get into that type of thing. And when you say, okay, all the requirements are met, when that happens, do you think at the end of the day you can trust that person wholeheartedly?
No, because I'd be wondering if they'd be trying to take it away again.
Right? That is so unhealthy. It's wildly unhealthy.
Conditional love. If anything, let me go ahead and read to you what our OP said in a couple responses. So in one response, OP said, in response to somebody saying that their relationship sounds like it's dwindling, OP responded and said, yeah, this is my fear. When I was married, I'm a widower. I had dead bedroom after 3 years. We went from best friends to roommates. The reason for the dead bedroom, health reasons, was completely different than my current situation. In addition, our OP said in another comment to a Redditor saying that it sounds like she was pressuring him into marriage, if I had to guess, it's due to guilt and wanting to get married quicker. Unfortunately, this does the complete opposite for me in terms of marriage, not just due to the lack of sex, but due to the lack of communication. It sounds like our OP from how he's made it, because that's not the first time that he said there was a lack of communication. He says it in another comment where he puts, the lack of communication is the worst part. It sounds like our OP's been trying to understand why it is these boundaries were put into place and how it is that they could potentially work through it. If there is a lack of communication when it comes to both parties, I mean, it might just leave our OP potentially leaving a relationship that would be a good one otherwise, based on his PS to Redditors.
He only has two choices at that point. You either choose to go get counseling, couples counseling, really get to and if she's not willing to do that, then you should not be willing to enter that relationship any further. It's a lose-lose. I understand that, but it's better to find someone that's going to be willing to work on it with you, because no one going into a relationship is perfect at communication. The hardest part about communication is you can only learn it during the hard moments. It's something that not enough is given credence to. Everyone can communicate when the sun's shining. It's great.
I love you.
But that's not really communication.
You're the best.
It's easy to agree with people when we're both agreeing, but it's hard. It's really hard to learn how to communicate when the cards are down and everyone knows that a difficult conversation is coming.
Timstradamus, let me give you some feedback.
But you have to learn how to be that person. You have to learn how to be held accountable and to hold accountability to other people. Agreed.
Well, I do wish them the absolute best. It sounds like he's trying to find other ways. He must care about the relationship quite a bit if he's not just looking to leave and move on. Hopefully, they're able to get that communication streamlining again and maybe find some middle ground that the both of them can be happy with, rather than it just seem a tit for tat.
Agreed.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about this interesting one. Am I the a-hole for siding with my kid against my wife? My 44 male, wife, 42 female, and I have 3 kids. Let's call them Josh, 15 male, Megan, 14 female, and Sharon, 12 female. My wife has always enforced strict rules. The relevant rule here is her rule around chores. She has a list of chores for the kids to complete weekly before Saturday morning. 1. Make your bed. 2. Do your laundry. 3. Do the dishes. 4. Take out the trash. 5. Vacuum the living room. 6. Clean their rooms. 7. Clean their shared bathroom. Each week, wife will assign communal chores to each kid, and each one is responsible for their individual chores, like cleaning their own room. These chores are assigned ahead of the week, and if they're not done by Saturday morning, they can kiss their weekend plans goodbye. They're not grounded, but wife revokes their privileges to hang out with friends until the chores are done. Josh has entered his rebellious phase, and he's really been pushing limits recently. This weekend, he had plans to go snowboarding with his friends. He assured his mom and me that his chores would be done this morning. Come today, Saturday, the dishes haven't been touched. His laundry remains in the hamper, and you can't walk through his room. He was fully decked out in his snow gear, and when wife asked him what he thought he was doing, he grinned and proudly announced he came up with a plan. He made an agreement with his sisters that if they did his chores today, he would do all the communal chores the following week. I thought this showed good problem solving. Wife felt differently. She said that was not the agreement. He started to bargain and negotiate with wife, growing increasingly desperate and frustrated. Trying to be a mediator, I asked my wife if it really was necessary to revoke his ski trip. He found a way to make it work so the chores get done, and we teach our kids to keep our commitments. And he made a commitment to his friends to go snowboarding with them. My son couldn't have looked happier in that moment. Wife was floored. She said he came up with this plan without running it by her. It might be a different story if he brought the solution to her last night, but he's just trying to do an end run around us. She said he could not go. End of story. This is where I might be the a-hole. Unable to control his anger, he yelled, "Fuck you," to wife. You could hear a pin drop in that moment. I was so caught off guard by this outburst, I started laughing and couldn't stop. Wife looked at me with betrayal. Then she quietly grabbed her purse and walked out of the house. I know I shouldn't have lost my composure, but I honestly am not sure if I'm the a-hole for siding with my son. Wife's rules seemed a little unreasonable given the weight of the outcome. The too long don't read. I sided with my son in an argument he was having with my wife about chores, and he told her "fuck you," and I accidentally laughed. Am I the a-hole?
We found our wiener jacket of the day, and that's really hard because all the other stories leading up to this were interesting in their own rights. It's not so much for your reasoning, okay? I like when, especially because this is what me and my siblings would do with each other. There were 6 of us. There's a lot of chores in a house when there's 6 kids. Learning how to negotiate and problem solve, I think, is important. So I can get why he would think the way he did at the beginning. He got what he wanted now, but next week he was going to be doing the chores. It is a good way to show kids how to problem solve and work around problems and hold to their promises. The issue here is that when the mother was in the middle of arguing with her son, you had this conversation with your wife in front of him. Once that started down that hill, it would have then been behooved of you to go to another room and have this conversation with your wife and really see where she's coming from. Did she see it as him taking advantage of his sisters and that he was never going to keep that promise to them? Was she trying to cut that off before it got worse? Because what you said to me was that you guys run a pretty tight ship, and it sounds like they've held to this, right? Why then would you say no, unless there's reasonings behind it? Well, you're not going to get to those reasonings if you're having that conversation with your wife in front of your kid, because now what you did is you've undermined the entire system.
And shown discord between both parents.
And now your son knows where to go when he wants things.
His dad, who apparently thinks his rebellious phase and really pushing the limits might possibly be a cool thing. Because that's the feeling I got from this.
To laugh? Why would you have had that type of reaction? It sounds like she's been painted into this, she's the tyrant of the household, and he's more the lax dad that gets to be fun. But by creating that environment where you both don't stand side by side with the rules and how things are handled, you're now, yes, seeing where this, he quotes it as rebellious, but I don't think it's rebellious. I think it's you seeing your wife as bad cop. And now he's about to start taking full advantage of this and not respecting your wife even a little bit. So by creating that fissure, oh boy, it's going to get a lot worse. He's 15. Woo!
I remember one time our son was on the couch and I had told him to get up and do something. And he had said under his voice, "You suck." And I remember how whatever you were doing, suddenly stopped. I was still trying to really think about what he had said, because for me it was a small thing and I was like, he probably just doesn't like it. But I remember you turning over and you said, "You will never disrespect your mom in front of me." That was it.
You got to be on the same page. And this is the thing, he was like 12 or 11 or something like that. Right when they start learning how to... It was
like 3-4 years ago.
And I don't mind. And I remember having that conversation right after when you and I were alone. I said, I'm okay with him acting like that. It's okay to have a little bit of push. You don't want someone to be a full robot.
But the only way that he'll ever learn respect is by doing the bad thing and then being taught what the right thing is to do. That's how I've always seen it. My father has always taught me that the best way that you can learn is through the mistakes that you make.
Sure.
And if it's embarrassing, then that means that moment will stick out just a little bit more. And then you'll never do it again, because you'll never learn from something if it matches everything else that you've done in life.
You've both got to be on the same page when it comes to raising the kids. You can't laugh at the other parent when they're being cussed at by one of the kids. You undermine everything. And you don't get those back, because once that's there, it's really hard to reset boundaries, especially when you're talking about kids. What exactly was he asking?
He's asking if he's the a-hole for siding with his kid against his wife.
I mean, obviously, he's 100% the a-hole for a lot of different aspects here.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's definitely the a-hole. And boy, did Redditors come out of the woodworks for this one. They say that the way that OP reacted only acted as a reinforcement that his son's disrespect is a good thing, rather than teaching their child that there are consequences to their choices. That if something wanted to be bent when it came to the house rules, it should have been talked about with both parents, rather than having this argument between the wife and the son. And that if the wife and the son were having this argument, OP was clearly doing nothing to fix the problem that was apparently happening in front of him.
Because he's fun dad.
Apparently, OP felt the burn so much that he said, "Okay, folks, I get it. I'm pretty much the a-hole through and through on this one. I took some time after posting this yesterday to work through it with my family and have a long talk with my son. I want to thank you all for your feedback and perspective." Well, let me go ahead and add a little bit of a Redditor's experience when it came to their stories on saying fuck you to a parent. One Redditor said, "I tried once when I was also 15. I got to fuck, and I saw the look on her face. She did that head tilt women do, the eyebrows slightly raised, her lips slightly parted as the rest of her just stops moving. The one that shows her slight surprise and she's just listening and observing, lazily, quietly, before she pounces. There's a certain dangerous relish in that head tilt in any woman, one that's just letting you go ahead, because she can afford to give you a head start. I was at least wise enough to recognize that danger and made a sharp exit from her company. I never tried again because I rather like my head where it is, still connected to my shoulders."
When you're reading that out, all I'm seeing is Zendaya in Dune.
Would you tilt her head?
Nope.
Well, commenters actually said there should be names for that head tilt. Some commenters call it the tilt. Others call it the death stare. There was this favorite one that I enjoyed. They said, "My kids have a name for this that I didn't find out until they were older. Apparently, it's called waking the Balrog." I was simultaneously embarrassed and proud when I was told. My mother thought it was hilarious until I told her we called her the Jabberwocky. Then my dad choked trying not to laugh.
At least for the father in this situation, that he was able to see where he's wrong and started the communication. You can still work your way from it.
I agree. At least he sat down with his family. Hopefully, things get on the right track with them. Well, let's go to our very last story of the day. And I know we ended off this last one on a fairly funny note when it came to the Redditors, but I wanted to end us off on a Today I Fucked Up one that I thought was pretty funny in my opinion. So let's get to our last story. Today I fucked up by getting banned from McDonald's. For the past few months, I'd been taking advantage of a promotional deal through the McDonald's app where one can snag their breakfast sandwich for a mere $1.50, a significant markdown from its usual price of $4.89. A steal, right? These deals, as many of you might know, are often used as loss leaders by companies to draw customers in, with the hope that they'll purchase additional items at regular prices. However, my transactions with McDonald's were purely transactional. I was there for the deal and nothing else. My order history was a monotonous stream of $1.50 breakfast sandwiches and nothing more. To me, It was a way of maximizing value from a company that surely wouldn't miss a few dollars here and there, especially given their billion-dollar revenues. But it seems my frugal tactics caught the eye of the McDonald's account review team. This morning, as I attempted to log in and claim my daily dose of discounted breakfast, I was met with a message that struck me as both absurd and slightly flattering. My account has been banned for abusing their promotional deals. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could taking advantage of a deal they offered be considered abuse? It's not as if I'd hacked the system or used illicit means to claim the offer. It was there, in the app, available for anyone to use. Yet, here I am, cast out from the Golden Arches digital embrace, all because I relished their deal a bit too enthusiastically. What puzzles me is the precedent this sets. Where do we draw the line between making the most of promotional offers and abusing it? If a company offers a deal, should there not be an expectation that customers will, in fact, use it? And if that usage is deemed too frequent, does that not reflect a flaw in the promotional strategy rather than customer misconduct? The too long don't read. My account got banned by McDonald's for exclusively buying their breakfast sandwich using a mobile app deal, making it $1.50 instead of $4.89. I never purchased anything else, just the deal item. McDonald's deemed this as abusing their promotional deal, leading to a ban.
I love his description, the Golden Arches digitally embraced. I just would wonder, how often were you buying this sandwich that garnered...
I mean, it sounds like almost every day.
I mean, you would have had to have abused that pretty hard for someone to have like singled your account out and said this is an issue, right?
This guy's my hero.
I mean, $1.50 for something that's almost $5. That's a great deal.
There's nothing as delicious as those sausage egg McMuffins. Oh, so good.
Good for McDonald's for getting their money back, you thief. I'm kidding. If they put it on there and it doesn't look like you've done anything shady, then I agree with that type of rationale. I would only just say, I think most people know the line of, like, you know, when you're taking an advantage of something. I think we all can understand that. But when you're trying to defend a multi-billion-dollar company, or if it was a mom and pop, I still feel the same. You know where the line is.
I'm just saying, if you have a promotional deal, I would take advantage of that. I kind of side with good on him.
I would just
make another email account.
How much are we talking? Well, that's all he has to really do is just make another account. But how much are we really talking that he's done this?
Let me calculate this because I'm curious.
Did he actually put down?
Oh, no, not in exact details, but I am curious. So let me go ahead and bring out my trusty old calculator here. So let's say our OP has a normal work week of 5 days, and he gets breakfast every day for 5 days. There's 52 weeks in a year times 5. So we're talking about 260 days. Times that by $1.50, talking about $390 that he spent in a year for breakfasts. If they're normally, $4.89, he should have been spending $1,271. Yeah, he's essentially was given $880 by McDonald's, potentially every year if he'd done this for, let's say, a year or two straight.
I mean, if he's saying strictly that he was doing it because it was there and they're offering it, then I don't see where he would be in the wrong. I just know for me, when something feels too good and you're continually walking that line, you should know when something's wrong.
Then block me from this deal. Block me from McDonald's deal.
I mean, they did.
Do it, McDonald's. I'll make another account and another and another. But honestly, I also have to agree. If the deal shouldn't be abused, then you should probably put something in the fine print to stop it. And if you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company like McDonald's, you would think that it would be put in the coding of these deals.
Well, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, all he has to do is make another account and he'll be just McDean. Okay.
Back to the Golden Arches digital embrace.
Yeah. That's such a weird way of saying that. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
You let us off into Monday with some very, I would say, somber stories.
Yes.
Some funny ones in there, but I hope for some of the people that are sharing their stories, they got the advice they need to make better decisions in their lives.
I hope so.
I'm just pulling for the young lady that had the 2 kids and now she's about to have a third. That's a pretty tough story to listen to. So I can only imagine how difficult it is to actually walk through those shoes.
Oh, hands down. I do wish her the best. It sounds like she's going to have a long trek, if just to pull away from all of the toxic to get to a good place.
Well, as our stories come to an end, don't forget, you've seen the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays. And on Wednesdays, we post on our Patreon, Damas After Dark. Mahaha.
Yes.
And talking about our Patreons, I would just love to say thank you to all of our Teatreons for all of your support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of you.
Mwah.
And as always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today? And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet. Because after this, we're going to the Pirate Fest thing.
I'm really excited. I can't wait for you to see my dress.
Yarg! It's so